All right, so today we're diving deep into the world of Mel Robbins and her super popular 5-second rule.
Yeah, the idea that you can basically trick your brain into taking action, really going to extract the gold here.
Yeah, so get ready to break free from procrastination, silence that inner critic.
And actually achieve those goals you've been dreaming about.
That's the dream, right?
Absolutely. And what's so interesting about Mel Robbins is that she's so straight-talking. You know, she just comes out and says motivation is garbage.
Which, yeah, at first you're like, what? But when you really think about it, how often do you feel stuck? Knowing what you need to do, but just not able to make yourself do it.
All the time,
Right.
It's like our brains are hitting the snooze button on our dreams.
Totally. Like, I'll have this great idea for a project, but then suddenly Netflix seems so much more appealing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Mel Robbins says that's because we're wired for survival, not for pushing ourselves outside our comfort zones.
Our caveman brains aren't really built for ambition.
Not exactly. It's like there's this gap between what we know and what we actually do.
The knowledge action gap.
That's it. And you know what? I think a lot of people connect with Mel Robbins because she's been there. She talks about this time in her life when she was unemployed, facing bankruptcy, just feeling totally lost.
She really gets it because she's lived it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where her famous 5-second rule comes in. This really simple but powerful idea that she actually came up with one morning while watching a rocket launch on TV.
Okay, I get the rocket analogy, like launching yourself out of bed or whatever, but
Yeah.
can this really work for everyday stuff?
Well, she started using it for that to force herself to get out of bed, and it became this secret weapon for her to beat procrastination.
So she's saying that by counting down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you can actually trick your brain into taking action.
That's the gist. And she's collected all these stories from people who've used it for everything from giving presentations to making tough decisions.
Really? Even preventing suicide?
She says so. And what's fascinating is that there's actually some science to back it up.
Okay, so there's more to this than just positive thinking.
Right. Apparently that countdown interrupts these automatic habit loops in your brain and forces you to use your prefrontal cortex, which is the part responsible for making conscious decisions.
So it's like switching your brain from autopilot to manual mode.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And it's not just about willpower or forcing yourself to do things you hate.
It's about understanding how your brain works and using that knowledge to your advantage.
Exactly.
So it's not just about taking action, it's about retraining your brain to make better choices.
That's the key. And she also talks about confidence being a skill, not a personality trait.
Which is a really interesting idea. You keep mentioning anchor thoughts.
Huh?
What are those exact?
Think of them like mental life rafts.
Okay, I like that.
When you're drowning in worry, an anchor thought is a positive phrase or image you can cling to that brings you back to calm waters.
So how do these anchor thoughts connect to confidence being a skill?
Well, think about it. You wouldn't expect to run a marathon without training, right? Confidence works the same way. You build it up through repeated action, even when you're afraid. And anchor thoughts help you take those actions.
So instead of waiting for confidence to magically appear, you can actually practice it.
Absolutely. And the 5-second rule is like a tool to help you start practicing, even when your inner critic is screaming at you to stay safe and comfortable.
Okay, this is starting to make a lot of sense. So we've seen how the 5-second rule can help us act, but what about those times when our mind is the problem, like when anxiety takes over? Does Mel Robbins have anything to say about that?
She does. In fact, she's been very open about her own struggles with anxiety and how the 5-second rule has helped her manage it.
One of the things that really struck me was her idea of reframing anxiety as excitement.
Right. It might sound a little out there, but she explains that the physical sensations of anxiety, the racing heart, the sweating, the tightness in the chest, are very similar to those of excitement.
So is she saying it's all in our heads?
Well, it's not that simple, but she does emphasize that our interpretation of those sensations plays a huge role. Instead of thinking, I'm having a panic attack, you could try telling yourself, I'm feeling the excitement of this challenge. It's about shifting your perspective.
Okay, I can see how that could be helpful, but it definitely takes practice. Does she give any examples of how to actually do this?
Yes. She talks about using the 5-second rule to interrupt the anxiety spiral before it really takes hold. When you feel those anxious thoughts creeping in, you can use the countdown to create a space between the thought and your reaction. And then you can consciously choose to focus on an anchor thought instead.
So it's like hitting the pause button on your anxiety and giving yourself a chance to choose a more empowering response.
Exactly. And she also talks about the importance of self-care. When we're feeling anxious or stressed, it's crucial to prioritize activities that nourish our minds and bodies.
You know, I used to keep a worry journal. It really did help clear my head. Maybe I should try that again.
That's a great idea. Mel Robbins actually recommends a similar technique called worry dumping. It's basically setting aside a specific time each day to write down all your worries and anxieties. By getting them out of your head and onto paper, you create space for calmer, more rational thinking.
So we've got the 5-second rule for taking action and anchor thoughts and worry dumping for managing our minds. That's a pretty powerful combination.
It is. And what's great is that these are all tools you can start using right away, no matter what your current situation is.
Speaking of starting, Mel Robbins also has a lot to say about morning routines. Her $1 Million Morning course seems to be pretty popular, but is there anything we can take away from it without having to buy the whole thing?
Definitely. She emphasizes one key principle that I think is crucial for anyone who wants to start their day off right. No phone in the bedroom.
Seriously. That's it.
Well, it's a big part of it. She talks about how those things are designed to keep us hooked, with notifications and updates and everything. It's like you're starting your day in reactive mode instead of proactive mode.
So instead of waking up and immediately scrolling through social media or emails, you're saying we should be doing something else. Like what?
Exactly. Create space for intention and presence, Start your day with things that nourish your mind and body. Meditation, journaling, reading, stretching, spending time with loved ones.
That sounds idyllic, but let's be real. I'm not sure I can just completely ditch my phone first thing in the morning. What about baby steps? Are there any other tips from the course that we can realistically apply?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
She talks about having a clear morning routine. That sets you up for success, Making your bed, drinking a glass of water, maybe a quick workout. Even if you don't do it perfectly every day, just having a plan can make a difference.
Yeah, I can see that. It's about taking control of your morning instead of letting it control you.
Right. And it's not about being perfect. It's about progress. Some mornings will be better than others, but keep practicing and refining your routine until it feels good for you.
So we've covered a lot. The 5-second rule, anchor thoughts, worry dumping, and even morning routines. It's a lot to take in.
It is. But you don't have to implement everything at once. Start with one small change and see how it feels. Then move on to another.
Right. It's easy to get overwhelmed when you're trying to make big changes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Be patient with yourself. Focus on one step at a time.
Okay, so let's say I'm ready to start using the 5-second rule. What does that look like in real life?
Well, we talk about getting out of bed. But you can also use it for things like speaking up in meetings, making a tough decision, or even just starting a task you've been putting off.
Let's talk about procrastination for a second, because I think we've all been there.
Oh, definitely. Mel Robbins says that procrastination is often rooted in fear or overwhelm. We tell ourselves we'll do it later when we feel more motivated or have more time.
But later never seems to arrive.
Never. So the 5-second rule helps you break that cycle by getting you into action mode. As soon as you feel that resistance, that little voice saying, I'll do it later, you start counting 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and immediately start working on the task, even if it's just for 5 minutes.
So you're basically tricking your brain into getting started?
Exactly. And once you get started, often you'll find the momentum builds and you get more done than you expected.
Okay, so picture this. I'm sitting at my desk staring at this huge project, feeling totally overwhelmed. Where do I even begin?
Well, first, you break the project down into smaller, more manageable steps. Then when you feel that resistance, you just count down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and start on the first step. Don't think about the whole project, just that one tiny action you can take right now.
So it's like focusing on a small win instead of getting paralyzed by the big picture.
Right. And you can use anchor thoughts to help you stay motivated.
Yeah.
Things like, I can do this, or I'm making progress every time I take action.
Like giving yourself a little pep talk.
Exactly. And the more you practice this, the more your brain starts to connect action with those tasks that used to be triggers for procrastination.
I can see how that would be really powerful. What about when you're feeling anxious or stressed? Can the 5-second rule help with that too?
Definitely. We talked about using it for anxiety spirals, but you can also use it to do things that help reduce stress, like self-care.
So if I'm feeling overwhelmed, I could use the countdown to make myself take a break. Go for a walk or meditate.
Exactly. Or if you're feeling anxious about something coming up, you could use it to do some deep breathing exercises.
I'm starting to see how versatile this rule really is.
It is.
Yeah.
And the best part is it's so simple. Anyone can do it.
Okay. So we've talked about procrastination, anxiety, self-care. Are there any other areas where the 5-second rule can be helpful?
Oh, tons. Relationships, communication skills, productivity, creativity. The possibilities are endless.
Wow. It's like having a superpower.
It kind of is. You have the power to choose your thoughts, your actions, your responses in any given moment.
Yeah.
And the 5-second rule just helps you access that power.
This is so inspiring. But I have to admit, I'm still not totally sold on that whole reframing anxiety as excitement thing. It just seems so counterintuitive.
I get it. It's a tough one, especially if you've struggled with anxiety for a long time.
Yeah.
But it's not about denying your feelings or pretending everything's okay.
So then what is it about?
Well, recognizing that your body's response to anxiety is actually really similar to its response to excitement. It's how you interpret those sensations.
So instead of thinking, I'm freaking out, I could think, I'm feeling the excitement of this challenge.
Exactly. And it might not be easy, but it can really help you manage that anxiety and turn it into positive action.
Okay, I'm willing to try it. What are some other ways I can use this reframing thing?
Think about things that usually make you anxious, like public speaking. You could try telling yourself, I'm excited to share my ideas, or I'm grateful for this chance to connect with people.
So it's about finding a positive spin.
Right, and it doesn't have to be complicated. Sometimes just saying something like, I'm a little nervous, but that's okay, it means I care, can make a big difference.
It's about accepting those feelings without letting them control you.
Exactly. And it takes practice. You're not going to reframe every anxious thought perfectly, but it gets easier.
So we've got using the 5-second rule to take action, manage thoughts, and reframe our feelings. It's a whole toolkit.
It is. You can use it anywhere in your life.
So far, we've been talking about personal growth. But can these principles also apply to work goals?
Oh, absolutely. Mel Robbins talks a lot about that too. Using the 5-second rule for success at work.
Like what?
Well, say you feel stuck in your job, or you're afraid to ask for a raise. The 5-second rule can help you overcome those fears and take action.
So if I'm sitting at my desk dreading a conversation with my boss, I could count down to make myself pick up the phone.
Exactly. Or if you're nervous to apply for a new job, count down and then hit submit on that application.
It's about pushing past that initial fear and taking a step.
Right. And remember, anchor thoughts can be helpful here too. If you're nervous about asking for a raise, remind yourself of your accomplishments and how valuable you are to the company.
So instead of focusing on the fear of rejection, I'm focusing on my strengths.
Exactly. And that can make a huge difference in your confidence when you're negotiating.
Okay, I'm seeing how powerful these tools can be in a work setting. But what about relationships? Can this help with communication and connection?
Of course, Mel Robbins even has a whole chapter in her book about using the 5-second rule for stronger relationships.
What are some of the key takeaways from that?
Well, she talks about using it to have those tough conversations, to be more honest about your feelings, and to show up more fully in your relationships.
Can you give me some examples?
Sure. Let's say you need to have a difficult conversation with your partner about something that's been bothering you. Instead of putting it off or letting things build up, you could use the 5-second rule to start that conversation in a calm way.
So I could count down and then say something like, hey, there's something I'd like to talk about.
Exactly. That countdown can help you stay calm, even if the conversation gets emotional.
That's helpful. What about being more honest about my feelings?
Sometimes we hold back because we're afraid of being vulnerable or rejected.
Right?
The 5-second rule can help you overcome that fear.
So if I'm holding back from telling my partner how much I love them, I could count down and just say it.
Exactly. Or if you're feeling hurt or angry, count down and then express those feelings constructively.
Okay, and what about showing up more fully in a relationship?
It's about being present and engaged with the other person. Instead of checking your phone or letting your mind wander, use the 5-second rule to focus on whoever you're with.
So like if I'm at dinner with my family, I could count down and then put my phone away and actually listen to them.
Exactly. Or if you're with your partner, you could count down and then initiate physical touch or tell them how much you appreciate them.
It's about being intentional with the people you love.
Right. And the 5-second rule can help us do that.
So we've covered a lot here, from personal growth to work to relationships. It seems like this rule can be applied pretty much everywhere.
It can. It's a reminder that we have more control over our thoughts, our actions, and our lives than we think.
That's a really empowering message. It's easy to forget that.
We all have times when we feel stuck or afraid. But the 5-second rule reminds us that we don't have to stay there. We can choose a different path.
And sometimes all it takes is a simple countdown.
Now, before we get to part 3, where we'll dive into some even more specific ways to use the 5-second rule, I want to leave you with a question to think about.
Okay, I'm listening.
Think about some part of your life where you've been feeling stuck. It could be anything. A personal goal, a career ambition, or even a relationship.
Got it.
Now ask yourself, how could you use the 5-second rule to take a step forward?
It's easy to get lost in theory, but it's putting it into practice that makes the difference.
Exactly. So I challenge you to experiment with this in your own life. See how it feels, what happens? You might be surprised.
Right, so we've explored this 5-second rule
Yeah.
and seen its potential, but how do we actually use it, to tackle everyday challenges and make real progress?
That's the key, right? It's the little things that can make a big difference. Think about those moments when, you should be doing something like hitting the gym or choosing a healthy meal, but you just don't feel like it.
Oh, yeah. My willpower just vanishes the second I walk through the door after work.
Exactly. And that's where the 5-second rule comes in. As soon as you feel that resistance, that voice saying, I'll just do it later, start counting down.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then I guess I lace up my running shoes.
Or grab an apple instead of chips, or
Yeah.
just meditate for a few minutes. It's about taking action before your brain can convince you otherwise.
It's like a preemptive strike against procrastination.
Exactly. And it works for anything that you need a little push to do. Making that appointment, cleaning the kitchen, finally finishing that project.
This is starting to sound almost too good to be true. Can the 5-second rule really fix everything?
Well, it's not magic,
Yeah.
but it is a really effective way to break those bad habits and start building better ones.
Okay, I'm sold. I'm ready to try this out. But I have to admit, I'm a little nervous. What if I try it and it doesn't work?
That's a common worry. But remember, you're not going for perfection here. It's all about practice. You're not going to nail it every time, and that's fine.
So what should I do if I mess up?
First, be kind to yourself. It's okay to have setbacks, especially when you're changing habits that have been around for a while. Then try to figure out what happened. Did you hesitate before counting? Did you let those negative thoughts sneak in? Once you find the roadblock, you can try a different approach.
So it's like trial and error.
Exactly. And the more you try it, the more you learn about yourself and what works for you.
That's a great point. It's not one size fits all.
Right. And keep in mind that Mel Robbins didn't just invent this overnight. She struggled with all this too. Procrastination, self-doubt, the whole deal. But she kept trying things out until she found what worked.
So it's a journey.
It is. And it's worth it, because when you can finally overcome those self-limiting beliefs, the results are amazing.
This has been such a great conversation. I
Yeah.
feel like I have a whole new understanding of this stuff.
Yeah.
Motivation, confidence, taking action.
I'm so glad to hear that. And remember, the 5-second rule is just one tool. There are tons of other resources and strategies out there to help you.
So it's about building your own toolkit.
Exactly. And the most important thing is to believe in yourself and your ability to create the life you want.
Couldn't agree more. Well, this has been a fantastic deep dive into the world of Mel Robbins and the 5-second rule. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep pushing yourself to be the best version of you.